Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to talk about my experience on the TN visa, the Trade NAFTA Work Visa as it's known. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the TN visa is, just share my experience on that visa. And for some context, it's been 1 year since I went to the States on a TN visa. I have since come back to Canada because I was working there for a year. And I moved back to Canada about a month ago, so I feel like now the process is fresh in my mind, but also in hindsight, there are things that I learned which I want to share with you in case you're also interested in getting some international experience, particularly coming from Canada to the US. So first and foremost, what is the TN visa? As I mentioned, the TN visa is the Trade NAFTA visa, so the North American Free Trade Agreement. So it's a visa between Canada, the States, and Mexico. And basically the point of it is to get skilled professionals from Mexico and Canada to work in the US. This is a non-immigrant visa, and one of the conditions of being on this visa is that you have to go into the country with the intention to go back to the country where you're coming from. Given that you came in with the intention to go back, but you decide that you want to stay, you can pursue the immigration route, but only after 90 days. So your employer has to sponsor you so that you can get on this visa. My employer sponsored the whole thing, so they took care of all of the lawyer fees, all of the paperwork, and the filing of all the visa documents and stuff like that, which was very convenient. It is a maximum of 3 years, however, it's renewable every 3 years. But also another big condition, and to even qualify for the visa, is you have to be in a profession and have the credentials that are as per the Trade NAFTA list of qualifying professions. So I was able to qualify because I hold a Canadian engineering degree. That was one thing when I was getting my engineering degree, like back when I was in my late teens and 20s, in my late teens and early 20s, I did not think that it would open such a big door. But if you are currently getting your engineering degree, just a little heads up that it can qualify you for the TN visa. It can potentially be a path towards a green card and eventually citizenship. That will be a long route. That is something that I considered briefly, but after realizing how long of a route it was going to be to get my green card in the States, I was like, sorry, I don't got the time. So now to get into some tips that I discovered along the way, which are a good, valuable heads up in case you're thinking about getting a car, bringing your car, in case you have questions about credit, things like that. I'm gonna just cover some of the big points that were very pertinent on my TN visa journey. So first and foremost, let's talk real quick about a car. If you wanna bring your car down to the States, what are the rules around that? What are some of the roadblocks that you could run into, pun intended? In the States, in 2007, it became mandatory to have a tire pressure monitoring system on your vehicle at the point of manufacturing. It's known as a TPMS. Generally, if your car doesn't have a TPMS, you may have to get one installed, and perhaps that will be acceptable for import and registration purposes. It may require some additional paperwork, but there's articles online of people successfully installing an aftermarket TPMS and successfully importing and registering their cars. You can actually drive your car for 365 days federally in the US without it being imported. But technically, once you get to the state, you should register your car within whatever the time frame is for your state. At the border, they told me that if you get stopped by the cops in the States and they might have some questions about your registration, on a state level, they might question you. But on a federal level, we don't care if your car is here for less than 360 days. The second thing I'll talk about is credit. So if you go to the US, your Canadian credit does not transfer over. You have to build a brand new credit history. There is one program where you can effectively use your Canadian credit to have credit in the States. My credit score was never as good in the States as it was in Canada, just because I just wasn't in the States for that long. I was only there for a year. The other thing is that it's a little bit difficult to open a bank account when you're brand new to the US because you have to have a US number. So that was one of the very first things that I changed. You also need to have a social security number or I think, what is it called? Like a tax number of some sort. Because you don't have your bank open yet, you might just have to pay with your Canadian funds for a little while. I was paying with my Canadian credit card for a little bit before my American bank got set up and I got a credit card in the US. Now let's talk about some investments. What did I do with my investment accounts when I moved? This is by no means financial advice. This is literally just what I did based on the reading that I did online. And of course, talk to a professional cross-border accountant to assess your personal situation and what's best for you in accordance with your goals. The big thing is that when you move to the States, you can no longer contribute to your TFSA or your FHSA. So that's why I was kind of eager to try to pull out as many funds as I could just to allow myself to actively invest in USD. I think I sold everything in my TFSA, transferred it into USD and opened investment accounts there. I also transferred everything in my FHSA into my RRSP. But you can't just take it all out and then move it into your RSP. You need to fill out a special form. I'll put the name of the form right here. If you want to move your FHSA funds into your RSP with no tax penalties. And then if you have an employer sponsored RRSP, I have one that ended up just staying in Canada and my employer just didn't contribute to it over the time that I was in the States. But when I was in the US, my employer also opened up a 401k for me. So I had a retirement account that was American that they matched. So basically now I have a 401k in America and my RSP in Canada, which is employer sponsored as well. I also want to add that if you worked the same year in Canada and the US, highly recommend a cross-border accountant just to cover you for that year, because in the States, if you do not declare foreign investments, you can be subject to a $10,000 fine. Thankfully, my employer covered the cross-border accountant, but that is a really important thing to note. And now let's talk about the last point that I want to mention that you should know about the TN visa. I'm pretty sure that this is the same as per any work visa. But the biggest kind of downside of being on a work visa is the limitation that you have to monetize your skills. Technically, when you're on a work visa, the only active source of income that you can have is from the employer that is sponsoring you. Because of that, having a side hustle on a TN visa can be something tough to arrange. You can get a second job if you find another employer to sponsor you. You can passively earn money, so you can invest in the stock market and get dividends. You can invest in real estate to an extent, as long as you're not like doing active labor in the house. So for example, like buying a property and renting it out, as long as somebody else is managing it, legal under the TN visa. It would be illegal if you were the one that was doing all the work and managing it actively. It was a really good experience, but long term, I definitely like the freedom. I like the freedom to be able to monetize whatever skills I want to monetize, have my options open. I just appreciate that in general as somebody who values freedom. So that concludes this video about my experience in the States on a TN visa. If you're interested in potentially working abroad on such a visa, I do think that it's worth it. Maybe not for super duper long, but obviously that depends on what your goals are as well. Thank you for watching. Have an awesome rest of your day. Bye guys.